What a headshot! What a head!
How's it, guys? This is Dayvy, FPL, and welcome back to the Fantasy Premier League video here on my channel. Now in this video, I'm going to be taking you guys through the ultimate guide to Game Week 1. So it feels good to finally kind of get back to these videos relating to the upcoming game weeks. And this is probably a good time to inform you guys of kind of what I'm going to be doing throughout the season. So every single game week, or at least the week before that specific game week, I'll be releasing a team selection and then also an ultimate guide. So if you guys have been watching my channel over the previous seasons, the ultimate guide is basically going to replace the game week previews. I just thought that it's a better name for it, but we will be covering the exact same content. If you guys haven't checked out my team selection for game week 1, I dropped it about 2 days ago, so go check that video out. And obviously that kind of video relates more to my own selection and my own team, whereas these videos are going to be more of a community basis. So if you guys ever do have a question that you want covered for the upcoming game week, whether it be game week 1 or game week 38, the easiest way to kind of tell me is if I don't put out a tweet over my Twitter page asking you guys for talking points. You can always drop it in my DMs, even tweet it at me, or just drop it in the YouTube comments. I see literally every single YouTube comment that you guys do post, good and bad, hopefully more good on that side of things, but I will always see your guys' suggestions, so just drop it down below and maybe I'll even cover it in the ultimate guide for that specific game week. But just to give you guys some background on this specific video, as well as what to kind of expect in the ultimate guides, I'll be doing some normal kind of routine things like looking at who has the best attacking and best defensive fixtures for that specific game week. We're going to kind of wrap up every single ultimate guide with looking at my captaincy options, as well as the options that are predicted to score the most points. A special addition to this video is that we will be looking at the template team for the top 1000 managers in the world. I know, quite an exciting one there. So now you kind of get my team selection as well as the top 1000 managers in the world. I mean, how are you going to decide on your own team? I don't know, but hopefully you guys do add your own spice or your own flavor, as I always do say. But if you guys are interested in the ultimate guide, as I hope you are, because we've got some banging content in this one, sit back, relax, and let's get straight into it. So to start off the video, I just wanted to give you guys a reminder about the deadline stream that we will be doing an hour before the deadline on Friday evening. So whatever time zone you guys are around the world, I love that we have viewers from all around the world, whether it's going to be your morning, night, or afternoon, whatever it is. Hopefully I see you guys there in the stream as we'll be going over my final team selection going into that game week 1 deadline. So that's enough of the reminder, let's get into the talking points. So to start off the ultimate guide, and because it is game week 1, I wanted to give you guys some more general kind of talking points. And I know that you're probably sick of me talking about these things, but if you are sick of me talking about them, I'm doing my job, because I want to remind you guys so it's ingrained in your FPL mind that you should watch out for these things. So they might be a little bit basic, but hopefully you do take some information from it. So the first one is going to be the press conferences. So basically before every single game week, a couple of days before, it might even be the morning before the deadline, we do get some press conferences from every single manager around the Prem, and they basically give us some insight into the squad selection, who's injured, who might be starting. And we do have some managers that don't really tell us that much. The new Spurs manager, Pep Guardiola, those are kind of examples of managers that don't really give too much away in the press conferences, but at least we do get some insight into maybe who's injured and who we might have to take out of our own FPL teams. So make sure you guys, especially for game week 1, are paying close attention to what the managers say, because we will be getting some insight into players that have only kind of come back to training, players that played in the Euro finals. You can think of your English selections like Ben Chilwell, Mason Mount. Is Sancho going to be starting for United against Leeds in game week 1? Hopefully these questions are answered, and hopefully we do get some more insight to finalize our game week 1 sides. But this is kind of going to be something throughout every single game week, so I want to remind you guys about it every single ultimate guide. I just want to give you guys a little bit of a head start here before the season goes ahead, to recommend that you should be watching out for some news. Now the next talking point is a little bit more relevant to game week 1 specifically, and that's going to be new signings. So yes, the transfer window does kind of extend to, I think, about game week 3. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong there, or just maybe look up on Google when it does end. But as far as I know, it doesn't end as game week 1 commences, and we will have a couple of game weeks ahead that new signings might kind of filter in. But I think as of recording this video, and as of 1 week before the deadline, unless the player was specifically in the Prem or has been back in training for the respective team, which I don't think there's going to be many of them, because most of your new signings now will be kind of your higher class players such as a Lukaku that should be joining Chelsea pretty soon. But with the new signings, if they haven't really signed for the club and are training yet, I wouldn't touch them for game week 1. And the specific reason for that is I don't think they'll be playing game week 1, and you can't even be assured that they're going to start game week 2 because they might be filtered in slowly but surely to the Prem, because you must remember some players are joining from another league, so the Prem could be quite an adjustment for them, and I think the managers would rather get off to a more conservative start where they could get some results than throwing in these new signings and just hoping that they swim and don't sink. So for most of my drafts, I haven't really considered new signings at all, unless the transfer did go through a couple of weeks ago, because then at least the players had a couple of preseason games, a couple of preseason training sessions with them. Whereas with most of the new signings right now, more of the premium new signings, I haven't even seen that they've been featured in training pictures. So that's something to just keep your eyes on, and we can always bring these options in at a later stage if they manage to get off to a good start for their club. And that's why someone like a Bruno Fernandes for me could be actually a cash bank that we can always downgrade him to a Sancho if Sancho looks quite good or has picked up a little bit of form. So my recommendation would be kind of go for assured options in game week 1. The last thing you want to do is take out a player before game week 2 just because you brought them in thinking they would start and they ended up being on the bench, or maybe worse, not even in the squad. So now going on to probably the most exciting part of the video is I'm going to be telling you guys about the top 1000 players in the world and their template team. So what made this possible was fantasyfootballfix.com. I have an affiliate link for you guys for 65% discount. Didn't really want to make it a separate talking point because I'm pretty sure you guys are tired of me talking about it, but just a reminder that it does end as game week 1 commences, so your best chance of getting that discount is going to be right now. But if you guys do go over to their website, they give you 2 template drafts. The first one is the overall template, so taking every single player in FPL in the game and using that template. But then they also have the top 1000 managers, which throughout the season will change because right now it's based on the top 1000 managers ranks of all time, and then it will change to the top 1000 of this respective season. So game week 1's top 1000, game weeks 2 top 1000, etc. So when I first looked at this top 1000 players draft, I was actually quite surprised. Those of you who have watched my team selection will notice something, that it's super similar to the draft that I managed to come up with, and I can't help but maybe pat myself on the back for that one. Thinking that I have the same draft as some of the best managers in the world is always quite nice to have, but in FPL nothing is certain, so just because I have the same draft as some good managers doesn't necessarily mean that this team is actually going to bang in game week 1. So let's start off with the bench, because as I always say, the most boring part of any kind of draft. And the bench that the top 1000 managers have actually come up with is they've gone for rotating goalkeepers. Now the thing that you must remember, this is kind of the template draft, and that's why I think Sanchez and Bachmann are both here, because you're either going for Sanchez or you're either going for Bachmann, or maybe you can slip in a Martinez somewhere in there. But because it's the template draft, we do have a rotating goalkeeper selection, and Sanchez and Bachmann have made the cut. My recommendation would be just downgrade Bachmann to a 4.0 goalkeeper and then just use that money to upgrade another department or maybe another player on your bench, because most game weeks Bachmann isn't going to see the light of day from that first bench spot. The rest of the bench I'm perfectly fine with. We've got Ayling, my personal favorite 4.5 defender. We've got Brownhill, my favorite 4.5 midfielder. And then we've also got Amarty, and I'm actually happy that they featured him in this draft because I had a lot of questions on the team selection about whether Amarty's nailed, whether you guys should bring him in. And my kind of consensus on it is that I think for the opening couple game weeks, he definitely will start at that centre back slot, just because Leicester are really kind of lacking with centre backs because of injuries and fitness and that sort of thing. But if they do sign another centre back, which I'm pretty much expecting them to, I think that Amarty will drop to the bench. So for the opening couple of game weeks, perfectly fine to go for him, unless they do have some nice fixtures, so you can even start him if one of your starting 11 doesn't have a great fixture overall. Now going on to the actual starting 11, I've already mentioned Sanchez, so I won't talk about him in there because I've spoke about him enough as my favorite goalkeeper option. The rest of the defense is quite nice as well. We've got Trent, Luke Shaw, 100% template there, nothing wrong with that. And then you also have Soufal from West Ham. So I won't lie to you, I actually did have Soufal in one of my more recent drafts, but the only thing that kind of put me off him was the fact that West Ham now do have that Europa League, and we just don't really know how they're going to split the squad. So there have been some talks about maybe having a full starting 11 for the Europa and then a starting 11 for the Prem, and then maybe Soufal will find himself in the Prem side, but I do think he's probably going to play more minutes as that kind of nailed fullback for West Ham, and that's the kind of the only reason why I didn't go for him, and maybe maybe considered some other 4.5 options that were just cheaper for me, but might not perform as well. So I really do like Sufal if you guys manage to fit him in, but right now my midfield is kind of taking up most of my budget because the top 1,000 managers have gone for Rafinha at 6.5, whereas myself, I've gone for Diego Jota at 7.5. So I kind of needed to find that budget. I took it from the reserve goalkeeper, I took it from Sufal to maybe a Ben White, and then I upgraded Rafinha to Diego Jota, which is 100% fine. Either option's fine for me. It's a real 50-50. I just think I'd rather take a punt on Jota with those lovely fixtures. Then once he kind of finds himself on the bench, I can always just change him to Rafinha when Leeds fixtures turn around game week 3, game week 4. I can't remember. I think game week 3 they have a nice fixture, but then game week 4 they don't have a nice fixture. So game week 5 probably is the more conservative option to go for those Leeds options. But I've seen Rafinha in a lot of drafts, and I can understand why, because you kind of want him for the entire season. If I had to kind of pick a side, a zombie team that I wouldn't change throughout the whole season, Rafinha would 100% be in there. But at the start of the season, I'd rather maybe take a punt while the Leeds fixtures don't look too great. The rest of the midfield, I really do like. As I said, pretty similar to my own draft that I released 2 days ago. Salah, Fernandes, 100% go for them. But then also have Harvey Barnes, which is quite nice to see that, because not a lot of people have kind of gone for Harvey Barnes. So I maybe wanted a little bit of reassurance here by the group picking him. And that's what I've kind of gotten here. But with Harvey Barnes, I just really hope that he is nailed. I kind of have a couple of worries about him, because if he's not going to play, Iheanacho is going to play, and Iheanacho had great form last season. So maybe Brendan Rodgers wants to go for a different formation. But I'm kind of hoping that Harvey Barnes is nailed, at least up until game week 3 when they face Norwich, because he might even be my captain going into that game week. The front line is exactly the same as the template. I've seen a lot of managers kind of go for this. Tony from Brentford, Danny Ings from Aston Villa, and then finally Antonio from West Ham. So I've spoken about these options enough, so I'm not going to bore you guys with more kind of tips and tricks about them and facts about them, but I do 100% agree with this front three. And if you guys want to still go with it, even though it is kind of template, it's template for a reason, because I think they will return points from that forward department. There also has been talks about maybe a Tammy Abraham signing for Arsenal, and he also comes in at 6.5. So maybe with a Tony, you can easily kind of shift him to Abraham if he does manage to start for Arsenal. But you must remember, Aubameyang and also Lacazette are still going to offer some competition for Tammy Abraham at Arsenal. So now going on to the best fixtures from an attacking point of view, and this is also straight from fantasyfootballfix.com. And what you guys can go do is look at their fixture analyzer, and then they have a defense rating and then also an attack rating. So in this video, we'll be going through both of them just specifically for game week 1, but you guys can do it for as many game weeks as you want. And as you can see, actually a little bit of a surprise here, at that top attacking spot with the best attacking rating is going to be Everton against Southampton. Now I think this is just because Southampton last season were pretty atrocious from a defensive point of view, and I probably agree with this. I think that Southampton don't look great. I can't really see them having too many signings that will improve themselves defensively. So I think that Everton, if they do manage to be on form, can put a couple past Southampton in my opinion. And that's why maybe I'm overlooking this Everton fixture. I don't have DCL, don't have Digne in that back line, so maybe I should consider going for an Everton option just because of this game week fixture looking so good. The next two teams is perfectly understandable. I would probably say Liverpool have the best fixture and then Chelsea the second best, because Chelsea obviously playing Crystal Palace, Liverpool playing Norwich. Norwich for me is the best fixture to kind of target throughout this season, so I'm going to be going for a Mo Salah captain. Spoiler alert on the captaincy there, but I think as many Liverpool options as you guys can get for game week 1 is going to be essential, because I think this game should probably go in Liverpool's favour quite comfortably. What should be kind of a 1-1 or a Norwich win right now, because I've said that Chelsea against Crystal Palace is quite a hard one to call, because Crystal Palace do have a new manager, but it currently looks like he's quite an attacking manager. So is that going to kind of prove good against Chelsea? I don't think so. I think Chelsea should score a couple here, and that's why I'm kind of looking at maybe fitting in a Havertz for a game week 1 punt, or at least a 1 week punt when Chelsea's fixtures in 2 and 3 don't look that good. The rest of the teams are actually quite interesting. We also have Watford, Newcastle. Probably wouldn't predict them here, but then we also have Arsenal and Manchester United, which is kind of expected considering that there are kind of top table teams facing worse opposition. So those two teams could also target them. I'm not really looking at too many Arsenal players right now, but definitely United with Bruno Fernandes and Luke Shaw, hoping that they can deliver the goods and the FPL points against Leeds at home. So now moving on to the defensive fixtures, if you guys are looking to maybe target some defenders for game week 1, we have Chelsea at the number 1 spot. Not only are Chelsea rock solid at the back, but they are facing Crystal Palace, which I did say in preseason Brighton are looking quite attacking, so that might be an interesting matchup to see how that Chelsea defense can cope against these kind of young guns of Crystal Palace that they've signed this season. Liverpool against Norwich, 100% as well. I don't know why, I just have this kind of sneaky suspicion that Norwich might nick a goal. Maybe a Pookie party is going to happen at the start of this season, like 2 seasons ago, when the Finnish striker looked absolutely red hot, but I'm kind of hoping that it's going to be a different red, it's going to be a Merseyside red, and I'm hoping that Liverpool can keep a clean sheet, with myself owning Trent Alexander-Arnold, and we might have to bring in Tsimikas after Robertson getting injured. Another surprising pick here was actually Burnley against Brighton, as I would have probably favoured the Brighton defence more than the Burnley defence, but maybe the stats and the algorithm are proving me wrong here, and is actually saying that those Burnley assets might be slightly better than those Brighton assets at the start of the season. Leicester, Watford, Brighton and Aston Villa come up next, and these could be teams that you look at if you want to go for more budget options in that backline. Now moving on to the captaincy, and first of all, we're going to be going over my choices. So what I usually try and do is I try pick 2 really assured options, and then I go for more of a differential option. But this game week, I can honestly say I can see all 3 of these players returning, and I think all of them could be good options. The number 1 option is obviously going to be Mo Salah, though. He's going to be captained by basically everyone that owns him. So I think well about 50% of managers will captain Mo Salah in game week 1. I personally will be doing it as well, because I just think out of these 3 options, for me, he's still the best option, even though you might want to go for more differential options at the start of the season. So Mo Salah 100% locked in there against a Norwich away. Then we go on to Bruno Fernandes, whereas this game is quite tough to call, and that's probably the only reason why I'm also not looking at captaining Bruno, just because Leeds sometimes are a bit hit or miss. At the end of last season defensively looked a lot better, but I mean this season, even if they are looking good defensively, United might be too strong in the attack, and it also might depend on what lineup United do play, with a lot of their players still out either through injury or haven't really trained through the preseason. The last player is probably my second favorite option. It's going to be Kai Havertz for Chelsea against Crystal Palace. Now, Havertz is pretty much nailed to start in my opinion, because 1, Lukaku's not going to play game week 1 if he signs, and then also they have a lot of options that are actually missing because of the Euros. So Mason Mount, a Ben Chilwell, I don't think these players will feature in the starting 11, and that's why I think they will go kind of for a Kai Havertz up front with the Timo Werner on the left. Now, Timo could always play centre forward and maybe Kai Havertz as a cam, but I think right now the formation that Tuchel probably prefers is Kai Havertz at that false 9 slot that manages to play out of position as a midfielder in FPL. So I really do like him, and if you want to go for more of a differential captain, I would probably recommend the German midfielder, as I just think this Chelsea game could be quite profitable for those of you who want to take a punt on going for a Chelsea option. Now, to kind of back up my decisions using the algorithm, I went over to Fantasy Football Fix and I chose the top 3 predicted point scorers for game week 1. And you can see that we do have a new inclusion here. It's going to be Sadio Mane, but does this change your mind about maybe going for a Sadio Mane instead of a Bruno? For me personally, no, it doesn't, because Bruno is predicted to score more points anyway. But with those upcoming Liverpool fixtures, I won't lie, it does look quite tempting. So in terms of the highest predicted scorer, it's going to be Mo Salah. A little bit of a no-brainer there against Norwich, a newly promoted side, but he's predicted to score 7.04 points, whereas just kind of edging Bruno Fernandes on 7.03. So my own FPL mind kind of tells me that I would have expected maybe Bruno to be a little bit further down on the points predictions, because I think Leeds are a really good side overall, and when you do compare them against maybe a Norwich, I don't think there's any comparison there between the 2 sides. So I think that Bruno should maybe be a little bit lower on the predicted points, whereas with Sadio Mane, I'm perfectly fine with that kind of prediction. I think Mo Salah will score more points, or at least predicted to score more, whereas Sadio Mane should be kind of on par but slightly less. I think that Sadio Mane is a great option for game week 1 if you guys maybe also want to go for a differential captain, but I will give you my word of advice. Last season I went for Sadio Mane over Mo Salah because he looked better in preseason, and this is almost an exact replica of that situation, because Sadio Mane in preseason has looked really strong, whereas Mo Salah has been basically nowhere. What happened game week 1 last season? Mo Salah gets a hat-trick, maybe against Norwich, it's going to be a repeat of that story. But this is basically a wrap the video, guys. Hopefully you did enjoy it. Please don't forget to like it if you did, and subscribe if you're new or have not subscribed yet. As I said in the introduction, hopefully I do see you guys in the deadline stream on Friday, and hopefully this season's going to get off to an absolute flyer, and 2021/2022 is going to be a season to remember. I'm going to be signing off. It's been Dayvy FPL, and I'm out. Cheers, bye.